As lockdowns and most COVID restrictions come to an end, some experts are now warning that unintended consequences of the pandemic will linger. One of those is a significant drop in cancer diagnoses during lockdowns, not because fewer people got the disease, but because they weren't getting diagnosed. Official figures estimate there could be thousands of people living with undiagnosed cancers right now, as Nadia Daly reports.
I find nature very healing. Just to get out into the bush, away from the crowds, you can just relax. And it was something that I really missed during my treatment.
After a tough year battling breast cancer, Melissa Blythe is returning to her favourite weekly pastime, hiking through bushland near her home in Sydney South.
Breast Green had been closed during Sydney's lockdown last year. They were just in the process of opening up at the very end of May last year when my mammogram was due. But you couldn't book in because the priority was given to women who had missed their appointments during the COVID shutdown. I waited a couple of months, I checked my breasts. Again, everything felt normal. And I thought, I probably should go and have a mammogram. But I did get a bit nervous when Sydney had a bit of an increase in cases last year, and because everything felt normal and I was nervous about COVID, I cancelled, and I later regretted that.
Eventually, in September of 2020, Melissa felt a lump and went in to get it checked.
The ultrasound and the mammogram were showing a mass of about 4 centimetres. The doctor gave me the news that it was breast cancer. So that was just a shock to hear that. And there was a real sense of urgency in his voice. He said that we really had to get started on chemotherapy straight away. So I had to have a mastectomy. I also opted to have my right breast removed. I also had to have all of my lymph nodes under my left arm removed. It was triple negative breast cancer. It's the one most likely to come back.
Last year, 730 revealed there had been a drop in tests that diagnosed cancer during the March-April lockdown in 2020. But new figures now confirm a drop in actual diagnoses continuing throughout the year. The data looks at 2 of the most common cancers in Victoria, a state where the effect of lockdowns is most evident. A report given exclusively to 730 by the Victorian Health Department shows that between April and July last year, the number of breast cancer cases detected fell by 37%, with regional Victorians reporting an even bigger fall. There was a 17% drop in bowel cancer cases detected last year up to the end of September, compared to 2019. Professor Sue Evans, whose team at the Victorian Cancer Council prepared the data, says the fall in the number of cases diagnosed means people are left unaware they have the disease.
We think that there are about 3,500 Victorians that are at the moment undiagnosed with cancer.
The reasons are varied and likely include the pause on screening services, as well as people's fear of getting COVID preventing them from going to get tested.
So sort of a bit of unintended consequence of the lockdowns in a way.
Yes, I think so. I think that's the indication that people were nervous initially, but there is a risk that the undiagnosed cancers will present in a more advanced state.
The data tells a similar story across the border, where all routine breast screening was temporarily suspended during Sydney's recent lockdown.
We have seen a reduction in cancer cases, and this reflects essentially being in the middle of a pandemic, strains on the system, and ultimately a reduction in overall cancer diagnoses.
Breast surgeon Sanjay Warrior collated data for 730 which showed a noticeable rise in more advanced breast cancers in his patients a year after Sydney's early 2020 lockdown. He says it's likely the same trend will occur after the recent lockdown.
It may be through the middle of next year where we start to see a spike. I do believe that we may see an increase in advanced cases with time in the next year, and that's a reflection of COVID-19, and that will be both in breast and in other diseases as well. Whether or not that will be months, probably more months rather than years.
The same trend is reflected across the country, with the federal cancer body estimating up to 20,000 people could have undiagnosed cancers around Australia. A study in the Lancet Medical Journal found 1 in 7 cancer patients around the world missed potentially life-saving operations during COVID lockdowns.
I live regionally and we have a really lovely community here in terms of, the neighbours, and we share fresh produce that we grow.
In the Victorian town of Ballarat, Honey Strachan was also reluctant to go to a doctor during last year's lockdown when an ulcer appeared on her tongue.
A lot of the GP clinics from time to time would close, there'd be a case there, the case numbers were rising, elective surgeries were cancelled, and I just had fear at that time that, exposing myself to COVID just didn't seem like a positive thing to do. So I guess I held on a little bit longer than I should have to go and see someone.
When she eventually went to her GP 6 months later, she received some news she didn't expect.
They gave me a referral to see an ear, nose and throat surgeon, and he had a look and pretty much immediately told me that he thought that it was tongue cancer. They actually performed a hemiglossectomy, which means that they removed half of my tongue and basically utilising skin from my forearm. And I just thought at that time, well, okay, I may not be able to speak very well again. I may not be able to work anymore. And will I survive ultimately?
Recovering for weeks in hospital alone, Honey couldn't speak or use her hand to text and has had to learn to talk and eat again.
It was really, really a stressful time. Because of COVID, I couldn't have any family, any visitors at all for the whole duration that I was in hospital. And that caused me extreme anxiety. Since this experience, I've put my health first and everything else fits around it rather than it being the other way around. I really, truly believe that your body sends you signs that you're unwell. They might be subtle, but it will definitely send you signs that you are unwell, and you've got a choice at that time to listen or ignore. And I think it's really valuable to listen. It could mean the difference between life or death for you, basically.
Melissa Blythe is also on the road to recovery and is echoing the same message.
I wish I'd gone and had my mammogram, that 3 months earlier, or even 2 months earlier, because maybe the cancer would have been smaller. You don't ever know if you're going to be the 1 in 7 Australian women who are diagnosed with breast cancer. I didn't think it would be me, but it was.